Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to grow infinite succulents. Basically, you can just keep doing this process again and again and just keep growing succulents. I have a couple different methods I'm going to show you today, so you can try one of them or all of them, see what works for you. The first one is my personal favorite, and that involves taking little leaf cuttings. This doesn't work with every kind of succulent, but with most of them, if they have little leaves, you can carefully wiggle and pull them off. It's very important that you don't break the leaf. If you break the leaf, you'll see the kind of wet, fleshy inside. You don't want to do that. You want to gently wiggle it off and it will just fall off naturally. Place the leaf on top of some soil in a dry, shady area and just leave it. In the next few weeks, little roots will come out of the broken off end and it will turn into a new plant. So a tiny little plant will grow from the base of the old leaf and the old leaf will die away. Once they start to develop roots, you can start to spray them with water from a spray bottle. Not too much, just enough to, feed them a little bit. And gently cover the roots with a little bit of soil so that, they can establish themselves. Now this method is very reliable, but it's important to take a lot of leaves because not all of them will survive. That's just the way it is. So if you take 10 leaves, you might have 6 or 7 that survive. The next method is cuttings. If your plant doesn't have leaves that will easily pull off, you can just take a pair of garden shears and snip off a piece. Take a cutting and put it aside to let the end scab over. The reason for this is because unlike with the leaves, when you pull them off, you don't actually break the skin. When you take a cutting, you are breaking the skin and you'll get that wet inside part. And if you put that straight into the soil, it could rot. So you want the end to scab over. Just leave it in a dry, shady spot for a couple of days and then plant it into the ground. And within the next few weeks, roots will develop and it will turn into its own plant. You can keep doing this, taking cuttings away, and they will all turn into their own individual plants. The next method is most commonly used with cacti, but it does work with some kinds of succulents as well. Some will shoot off little pups or heads, or sometimes they're called rosettes, off the side of the stalk. For example, with Echeveria, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. With Echeveria succulents, that's pretty common. They'll shoot off little pups from underneath. Once they have about 1 inch of stem, cut it off at the base of the stem, allow it to scab over like you would with a cutting, and then plant it in the ground. And that will grow into its own new plant. You can of course leave it on the mother plant, but I find that they do really well on their own because you don't get overcrowding in the pot, so they have their own room to grow and flourish. The fourth method is one that I haven't used all that much. I mostly use it with regular plants like ivy, but I recently found out that you can do it with succulents as well, so I thought it's worth mentioning. This is called water propagation. So you take off a cutting, fill a little jar or container with some water, about 1 centimeter or 2, and place the plant inside it. Leave it in a warm but not too sunny spot, for example on your windowsill indoors, and within a few weeks little roots will go out of the bottom of the plant into the water, and then you can carefully transplant it into soil. So those are all the methods that I have for propagating, and I've also got a couple of tips for making sure that your succulents stay alive once you've propagated them. The first is to be aware of burning and freezing. So succulents are very hardy, but you do have to be aware of burning and freezing. So if you live in an area that does have frost or snow, make sure you take them inside during the winter time, or if you know that it's going to be an especially cold night. They can also burn if they're in full sun on an incredibly hot day, and you'll be able to tell by the leaves. They will just discolor and look really gross. I'll insert some photos. This has happened to me a couple times because summer where I live gets really hot. So I just make sure that I keep them on our porch so it has a little bit of shade and a little bit of protection from the elements. Another tip is that it's really important to prevent root rot. This is probably the only significant problem that you'll face with your succulents, is if you give them too much water and the soil is too dense, then they will die. To avoid the roots from rotting, the easiest way to do this is to mix the soil in with something that allows for aeration. So my perfect ratio for soil mixtures for cacti and succulents is 2 parts of soil, 1 part of perlite and 1 part of sand. I mix this together and plant the succulents in there, and that makes sure that they have plenty of aeration so that the roots can easily develop, and when you do water it, the water doesn't stay stuck in the soil, it'll filter through. This is especially important for little baby succulents because they need air to be able to produce roots. When the roots are first developing, when they're little babies, They're not strong enough to push through soil that is high density of clay, or if it's just like really muddy and thick soil. So it's important to have a mixture of perlite or sand or pumice or something to just aerate the soil and allow them to freely move around. Lastly, the best time to propagate is in the springtime or the summertime. They do really thrive during the warmer weather, and I found the most growth has happened when I've propagated during spring. That being said, I first started doing this last year during wintertime, and it still worked, it just took a little bit longer for them to develop. So with all these tips, you can essentially have any succulent plant and continue to clone it as many times as you want, and with some patience, you can have as many succulents as you want. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions about gardening, you can always leave me a comment, or if you message me on Instagram, I'm more likely to see it, just because sometimes the comments get lost. I don't always get notifications for them all. I am by no means a gardening professional. This is just stuff that I've learned from my experience along the way. So if I said anything that was incorrect, feel free to correct me in the comments below. I'm all about learning, and you know, we can all learn together. I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I'll see you in my next video.